a game kind of begin to push its prices into the 2003 gacha genre. However, there is one major problem that I think will inevitably hold this game back if it is not dealt with before the official release that is projected to be in a few months. One other thing I want to preface before I start talking about the game is that I will only be comparing NTD to Genshin or the field in this video, as they are all the closest to one another as 3D large open world gacha titles. I will not be comparing ZZZ, HSR, and other gacha games that do not follow the same type of gacha world game flow. So, in order further to the game's competition, please keep that in mind. Without further ado, let's get into the most obvious problem the game has. Addressing the elephant in the room, NTE's biggest flaw, which I feel a lot of people without beating around the bush, the game is optimized pretty poorly on PC from my experience. Now, I don't want you to hear me say that and take away that this game is somehow unplayable on PC, because I was able to run the game just fine for the most part after turning down the settings. However, my PC is also above average, so I have a significant worry that people playing on less powerful devices will experience way more stuttering than me, even at the lowest settings. This really worries me because I fear that if some major headway is not made on this issue, the game runs the risk of being unplayable or frustrating to play for a lot of people's devices, which would obviously hurt the player base tremendously. Also, keep in mind that currently the game's recommended system requirements is a 3060 and an i7 with 32 gigabytes of RAM, which I think is a bit of an insane expectation for most players. While I did not get to test the game on mobile, I share similar concerns that the game will either be extremely intensive for the device or the graphics will be reduced so much that the city will no longer look and feel as good as it should. I also wanted to talk about 3 other disappointments I encountered while playing, these being the buggy controller on PC experience, the janky placement system for furniture in the buildings you purchase, and the fact that there are no puzzles in the open world. I would say these are smaller issues overall compared to optimization, because I do not think these things will take away from the game's playability for most players. However, I do hope that the devs fix these problems before launch. One other thing that does give me hope, though, is that I'm quite confident in the developer's ability to fix issues like these, as this section of the video was much longer and filled with bugs when it started the beta, but the devs patched out almost every bug that was going to mention while the beta was live. One last thing I wanted to say before moving on is that I did not skip down on the flow system, and while this isn't game-breaking or anything, I think it would be a super easy thing to add to the game that would gain a lot of player support long term. Now that I'm done listing the negatives of the game, it's time to move over to the good things that are happening. And trust me, it's a lot. Like seriously, the dev is absolutely cooked with basically every major factor that this game needs for success. Starting with the character dialogue and its presentation, NTP is on a completely different level when compared to its competition. Genshin grew up in a field wish that they could have as good character interactions and character animations and dialogue as this game. When you play through NT's story, you genuinely feel that you're experiencing a cutscene 80% of the time. Even the side stories are more animated than 95% of any of its competitors' main quests. Just watch the footage in the background as an example. When you talk to characters, sometimes they're zipping around the screen with overflowing personality, but sometimes props appear and interact with the characters in conversation. You notice this with a very good interaction you have with men at the start of the game, which is bouncing around all over the place, and things popping up behind malicious scenes. Not to mention that in NTE, you will rarely experience the dullness of characters having more or less static animations during the main story, where they only move their hands to their chest and move their arms slightly around their waist during dialogue. I think this bodes well, as the character dialogue presentation will feel like a very clear upgrade compared to something like Genshin Impact or Grid Waves will include. All of this put together makes the story experience infinitely more immersive than the other gachas, and is, in my opinion, NTE's biggest strength. With that said, the story itself is enjoyable too. I won't hold back on giving my full thoughts about the story, as all I played was a few main story quests and some side quests, so I anticipate that there will be much more to say when the game's story fully develops more on full release. What I will say though, is that the story quests I did play through were enjoyable and flowed well as a play guide for the main characters' introduction into the game's world. One other thing I will note is that the story I played was much more on the comedic or on serious side, so don't expect to jump into the game and immediately be thrown into a super intense and emotional story. The next thing I want to talk about is the visuals, because NTE easily has the best graphics for the market. Obviously, I know that this is not
Enfield
another
Crisis
lecture,
Team, ready for
and
action.
certainly you don't have to a lot of the performance issues that many other players and I were facing during the beta, but I would be honest. thought it would look good. Be prepared to have your socks knocked off if you step into Heat City for the first time. Not to mention, the game only gets more stunning when all of the different weather effects happen as you play. We're talking about the game visuals. It's also impossible not to talk about the city itself. After all, it's straight up beautiful. And the layout of the city is great too.
I'm in the flow. Yeah, freeze them!
In position. Raging wind.
From the storms, it came.
In position.
Fabulous work! Incredible!
Ready for report.
All set. Back to the fight.
In position. Not on my watch. Pick, look,
Responded like lightning.
storm of
A well-deserved victory.
Fortunately, I can say for certain that combat is completely I describe the combat as a multi version. This combat makes from the team and elemental reaction right after the extra. How the characters were super smooth to play and had great animations. The bosses were also fun, and there was a good selection of weapons, enemies that activate the city, the fun quick fight. It's simply due to the fact that I was running around town with SRAM characters and weapons with 4 duplicates against level 40 mobs and just vaporizing them instantly. I think that we get to play this game on launch with normal full economy where the devs aren't paying you 40 gold every day for power levels between characters and mobs will feel more in time. And since we're talking about combat, I also want to discuss what I've seen so far regarding the game. I really haven't experienced the full force and the sometimes the speed running and progression in a through the heavy content in the game. But I can say, at least from what I saw, the in-game seems pretty standard. NTP has a mode like Lewis holograms where you can let world bosses that are scaled much higher for a harder challenge, as well as the gotcha standard Spiral Abyss / Tower of Adversity. Clear a certain number of stages to get stars under it. Well, I think this is fine for a really special mode patch. I really hope that it isn't bundled rolling out for in-game content and in-game progressions. Players will have less easier time their teams to be strong in this game, which is something that I'll get into and talk about here. Relics, artifacts, modules, gear, whatever you want to call them, most designed in this game and have significantly less RNG compared to the other games in the genre. To start, you're able to select which types of modules that you want to be able to retain for your characters, which you'll get to for different currency that you get complete domains with the core piece of each set. Each module you get has a random role that will not change as you level it up, and you can see every stat that each individual piece is able and really to have. This means that there is no such thing as getting an artifact with great stats and one terrible one. Only to roll it and see that you hit defense percent 47 times and the piece is dead. This system also means you get pieces for every character at the same time, so long as you are farming and with the core set piece domains for a particular set becomes required. Additionally, every character has stat bonuses that can be activated by giving them specific types of pieces on top of the set bonus activated with using